Your fears that hold you back, your desires that propel you forward. Now, how do you turn this equation so that your desires win? Very simple. You use the law of concentration, and you think about what you want all the time. You dwell on what you want all the time. You keep your mind fixed on your desires. You become totally preoccupied with what you want, and as we said before, your fears have a tendency to dwindle. But whichever thing you think about, if you think about your fears or you think about your desires, whichever one you think about, by the law of emotion, is going to determine your actions, and your actions will determine your outcomes. This brings us to another law, which is called the law of expression. And this law of expression is very interesting. This law of expression goes back many, many years, and it predates even a quote from Aristotle, which says, whatever is impressed is expressed. Whatever is impressed is expressed. Whatever is impressed is expressed. Now, what does this mean? Let me go and sit down while we get the board cleaned off. It means simply this, is that whatever is impressed into your psyche for any reason, and from whatever source, whatever is mixed with emotion and dropped into your self-concept, will eventually be expressed as part of your personality, part of your reality. It says, in effect, that you see the world through your self-concept. You actually see your concept of the world. You do not believe what you see what you believe. Whatever has been impressed on your mind as a fact, or as a truth, or as a reality, will then be, he began to think like Napoleon. He began to imagine great plans like Napoleon would have imagined. He began to act with courage and confidence in the face of uncertainty, as Napoleon would have. Over time, he became absolutely convinced that indeed this person who was shy and retiring was truly the reincarnation of Napoleon. And as he did, his career improved. He was promoted, he was advanced, he changed the way he dressed, he spoke more confidently, and by the time he found out that he had been misled by the fortune teller, he was already an extremely successful businessman. Very interesting. Whatever is impressed and accepted becomes expressed. And this brings us to another critical mental law, and it is this. It is what is called the law of reversibility. When I first learned about this law, I was so excited I wanted to wrap it up and tie it up and not tell anybody. This is the first time in any form that I've ever explained this law to other people. The law of reversibility says simply this, is that if you achieve a certain level of success, a certain level of health, a certain quality of relationships, then that quality of relationships will create a subjective state. A subjective state means a feeling or an emotional state. In other words, if you win a prize, you will feel like a winner. If you fall in love, you'll feel like a lover. If you succeed in business, you'll feel like a success. The objective creates, in other words, the objective reality or the fact actually creates the subjective or the emotional state. That makes sense to you? In other words, something happens, you feel great, you get the feeling. However, the law of reversibility says this. If you can grasp this one fact alone can change your life, because it has changed mine, is that if you can create artificially the subjective state, the feeling will trigger the law of attraction and correspondence into motion, and will draw into your life the people, circumstances, and opportunities necessary to create the objective that is constant with the subjective. And here is the method. It's so simple, it's astonishing. It is this, is whenever you think of something that you really desire, imagine that you have it already. Imagine that you have it already. It sounds like a game, like children would play, but it is so powerful that it is awe-inspiring, and all I suggest you do is try it for a little while. Just imagine, close your eyes, drive it along, think about it if necessary, stand, relax, do whatever you want, but just imagine that you've already accomplished it, and try to get the feeling. Get the feeling. As though it were already a success, as though it were a past tense, as though it were already accomplished, that you don't have to worry about it again. You've already got the feeling. And if you will play that feeling over and over again, this law of reversibility will create this feeling. as you dwell upon the feeling more and more, the feeling will actually begin to change things inside you and outside of you and draw you toward your goal and draw your goal toward you, and the objective will come into reality exactly at the right time and place. You don't even really have to worry about the process between the two or what the steps are. All you have to do is hold that feeling very, very intensely. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about mental programming methods.
Now here's the second one, and we're going to take our break. Second law from the Bible. This one we've heard since we were small, I'm sure. It's called the law of sowing and reaping. In fact, we've probably heard it so often we could quote it. It says, whatever you sow, what? You shall reap. Fairly blunt, hopefully clear. Here's my first suggestion on the law of sowing and reaping. Don't try to beat it. You might as well try sitting on the sun in the morning. Keep it from coming up. You'll have better luck. Whatever you sow, you reap. Now, for a fair share of my life, I'm a bit mixed up on how all this applies. Among a lot of things I was mixed up on. I knew I wasn't reaping too good. That I understood. My problem was I was confused about what was causing it. Remember me with the funny list? I thought those are the reasons why it isn't working out well. And then Mr. Schoaf gave me the clue that helped me figure it all out. He said, Mr. Owen, I have another answer for you. There's another way to quote this law that'll show you where the problem is so you can go to work on it right away. All you need to know is where the problem is, then you can go to work on it. So he quoted me the law another way, and I found out what my problem was. Here's the way you quote the law. Whatever you reap is what you've sown. Now I knew what my problem was. Whatever you reap is what you've sown. If you don't like the crop, who do you look up? Answer, whoever planted it. And where do you find who planted your crop? Answer, in the mirror. What I finally learned to do come fall was to go to the mirror. That's where you go. And if necessary, you say, a few skinny carrots? I got to be unimpressed. Where were you last spring? Asleep. Didn't you read the books? Did you break your hoe?
Now the next law is the law of practice. The law of practice is also called the law of repetition, but it says that whatever you do over and over again, often enough, becomes a new habit. Do you want to be a positive, exciting, enthusiastic person? Do you want to become wealthy and successful? What is it that you want in life? Whatever you want in life, if you will practice it over and over again, it eventually becomes a new habit. If you practice it by thinking about it, you see, a new habit takes about 21 days to develop. It takes about 21 days to develop a new habit. 21 days of repeating it over and over again. Now, what we're going to ask you to do as a result of this course, and as a result of what we've talked about, is we're going to ask you or suggest that you go on what we call a 21-day PMA diet. That means that for 21 days, we're going to ask you to do a very difficult thing. One of the most difficult things you'll ever do in your life is for 21 days, we want you to keep your mind on what you want and keep it off of what you don't want. Keep your conversation on what you want. Keep your conversation off of what you don't want. Keep your dreams, your imagination, your thoughts, your feelings, everything in your environment consistent with what you desire, and keep it off of what you don't want. It's very simple. It's not very complicated. It's one of the most difficult things that you'll ever do. Now, why do we pick 21 days? Well, a very good reason. You see, it takes 21 days for a chicken that has a brain the size of a pea to sit patiently, calmly, faithfully on an egg to hatch the egg. Now, we feel that if a chicken with a little brain like that can sit of reversibility, the very law of emotion, the very law of habit that we talked about will actually begin to be changed. Now, what are the 4 things you need in order to make this great change? Number 1 is you need desire. Desire is the starting point of all change. The most important question that you have to ask yourself in life is, how badly do you want what you want? How badly do you want it? Or do you want it at all? You see, there's an awful lot of people to want an awful lot of things. But how badly do they want it? If you want it so badly, if you want it with tremendous intensity of desire, there's really nothing in the world that can stop you from getting it. There's an interesting story was told about Socrates, and Socrates was talking to one of his students, and the student said, I am hungry for knowledge. What can I do to increase my knowledge? And Socrates said, knowledge is something that is readily available and easy to get if you want it bad enough. He said, I'm sure I want it badly enough. And Socrates said, come with me, and he walked him offshore into the ocean, who have undergone great sacrifices so that the mother can stay home with the young children during their first 3 to 5 years. And people say, well, you're crazy, you need the money, you can't take trips, you don't have enough money to pay bills when you're not one or two people working. They say, yes, but our decision is to give our children the finest grounding and the finest emotional basis possible. And we feel that the way to do it is for the mother to be home with the children. So they are willing to make the sacrifices. And of course, everybody has to make the decision with regard to what sacrifices they want to make. The third is determination. Determination means to back your plan with, if you like, iron willpower. Again, every single study that I've looked at, and I spent, in the course of my lifetime, I spent almost 30,000 hours studying the subject of personal and corporate success, is that iron willpower is absolutely critical. Determination, the willingness to stick in when the going gets tough, the willingness to persist in the face of adversity, that kind of determination is absolutely critical to developing the new habit patterns of thought that will guarantee your success. And finally, discipline. This is my big favorite. It's usually the only place in this course where I mention this, but discipline is the master key to riches. Discipline is the master key to riches. Discipline, the willingness to do what you know you should do, and when you should do it, whether you like it or not, is the critical key to your success. Why is it that people fail in life? It's no miracle. It's no mystery. The reason people fail in life is that they're not willing to do whatever is necessary. They're not willing to pay the price. Half the time, most 3/4 of the time, they don't know what they want, and the ones that do know what they want are not capable of disciplining themselves. So the next time you sit there watching the television, next time you drive along listening to the radio instead of listening to an audio cassette program, you have to ask yourself quite honestly, in terms of the wonderful life that you are capable of enjoying, in terms of all the things that you want, is this moving you toward it, or is it moving you away from it? Because the truth of the matter is that everything that does not move you towards your goal moves you away from your goal. That nothing is neutral, that everything counts, that the sands of time are running, the clock, the meter is going right now. A very good friend of mine said, remember, this life is not a rehearsal for anything else. This is the real one. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you serious about being and having and doing everything that's possible for you? If you're growing a 21-day mental attitude diet, a PMA diet, if you will keep your thoughts on what you want for 21 days, if you will practice the law and develop new habits, practice repetition over and over again, practice the law of reversibility, and visualize and imagine yourself as the person you want to be, and practice the law of expression, that whatever is impressed on your mind will be expressed in your reality, you will see dramatic changes start to take place in your life, and sometimes far faster than you can currently imagine. Believe me, I know I have tried and practiced everything that I recommend to you. Thousands of my graduates have done it, and the results they have accomplished have been stupendous. They will be stupendous for you, too, and we'll talk about more of that in the next module.